Hey, what's up, YouTube? Yu-Gi-Oh! Trader 101 here, and how exciting it is. I finally broke the top 32 curse that I seem to have over the full course of the last few YCSs that I attended, and broke past the top 32, and was able to place in the top 4 of the largest trading card game tournament ever. YCS Long Beach was this past weekend, and as you can see, I won this awesome playmat, this cool trophy. It says 4th place on it, but we didn't play for 3rd and 4th, so... it says 4th, but 3rd/4th. I won a Blood Mephist, had a great time. The tournament was absolutely insane, the most insane weekend of my life. So many different things happened beyond just Yu-Gi-Oh! Me literally running through the airport to catch my flight home. So many things happened. I'm going to be writing a very extensive tournament report for Ultra Reality Games, probably at the conclusion of this deck profile. There you'll be able to read all of the stories, all of the experiences, everybody I met. I'm going to be giving lots of shout-outs, everybody who I have to thank for really giving me a lot of support, advice on the deck. All of the people who were there, deck cards I borrowed that I still need to mail to people because I just literally ran out of the convention. They gave me this trophy, gave me the prize card, took a picture of me holding this, and they're like, would you like a box for this? I'm like, I don't have time. I literally just took it and just ran. Huge shout out to so many people during this weekend. I don't want to start now because if I say and forget some people, I'm going to really regret it. So in the tournament report, I'm really going to sit down and think about everybody who I need to thank, from the people who drove me to the airport, from just so many different things. So I'm really appreciative for everybody who helped me out. You know who you are. You know I really appreciate everything. Jumping past that top 32, placing in the top 4, huge, amazing feeling to get there. Congratulations to Michael who ended up winning. I like Dark World. It's one of my favorite decks to play. Kind of salty I lost to it because I don't have all the cards in Ultimate right now. I traded them a little bit towards the end of the last format, and I'll have to get them all again in Ultimate, and they'll probably balloon substantially in price. But congratulations to him. He was a member of Duelist Grounds, which is awesome. I didn't know that before we played. I learned after, and after I had already left. I like playing against people from Duelist Grounds. It's great, and the fact that he won, huge props. Anyway, let's go to the deck. I know so many people have been asking questions about card choices, about exactly what is in the deck. I briefly gave a deck profile for Paul Clark on his channel, Series Treeborn Frog, but I gave no explanations. The top 64 pairings were literally being posted as I made that video, so I know a lot of people were curious, why is he running this, why is he running that? I'm going to give you everything, all of the thought process that I had building this deck. I built this deck Friday night with absolutely zero testing. Built it completely on a whim based on what I felt would be a good meta call. I played 4 games before the tournament against Billy Brake. We went 2-2 against his windups, and that is literally all of the testing and all of the pre-YCS games that I had with this deck. No testing whatsoever with Elemental Heroes. Kind of crazy to play a deck on a tournament scale like this with no testing whatsoever, but I felt really confident that my analysis of the format and this build would be the one that would be the most successful in the tournament, and I can say it probably lived up to those expectations. So let's go into it. Of course, we can have 3 copies of Neos Alias. This is self-explanatory. No need to explain why 3, and of course, no need to explain the Stratos. The 2 copies of Thunder King Ryo, and the 2 copies of Beast King Barbaros, followed by 1 copy of Crusader Endemia. These are all the monsters I played. You can simply see there are no Maxis in my deck. There are no Effect Veilers. There's no Honest in my deck either. I acknowledge the importance of hand traps. They are very powerful cards. I felt going into a tournament that was going to last 12, maybe 13 rounds of Swiss, plus a huge top 64 person bracket, my goal was to win the event. My goal was not to just top the event. I wanted to win the event. And I felt like not maining the hand traps would give me the best opportunity of doing that. Maxi is only really good against windups. It's okay against Rabbit, and it really isn't very good against many other matchups. I wanted to have the most consistent monster lineup in the most consistent deck possible. I wanted to keep it very basic. I wanted to play big monsters, removal, counter traps, and skill drains. That's it. There's no Bubble Man. There's no mask changes. There's nothing like that in this deck. Very basic. Big monsters. All of these monsters have at least 1800 attack, if not more. 1800, 1900, and of course the Beast King potentially going up to 3000. Big monsters and removal. That's all I needed. That's all I wanted. I didn't want Max C's. I didn't want to have my hand clogs with copies of skill drains, with Effect Veilers, and Max C's with Honests. I wanted just very basic. Every card on their own can do something productive and help you win. I didn't want to draw hands with Honest and no monsters. I didn't want to draw hands where I had Max C's and just all spell and traps. Very basic. 9 powerful monsters, 9 big monsters, and 9 monsters that you can just beat them down with. The Crusader, I put Crusader in over the 3rd Thunder King last second because I felt like I wanted another Gemini Spark target. Consistency is a huge issue with this deck. You want to have Spark targets all the time, Hero Blast targets all the time, targets for all of these types of things all of the time. And Crusader Endymion over the third Thunder King gave me the fourth Gemini Spark target, which was very important. Even if you don't have Gemini Spark, the fact that this is a Gemini puts your opponent in a very awkward position. So the fact that he was there as another target for Gemini Spark helped the consistency issues that are inherent in a deck like this. If anybody watched the ARG live stream over the course of last week, I spoke quite often about my hatred for decks with skill drains and Starlight Roads and all of this because of the consistency issues, and I really felt like I was going to try and build the most consistent deck possible for the event, including those cards. I think I achieved it fairly successfully. 3 copies of Power Duality, very self-explanatory. The consistency thing, you have the Thunder Kings, it doesn't really conflict. Not a lot of people are maining Thunder King, no issue there. I did very often cite out a third copy of this card because I would expect Thunder Kings coming in, but for game 1, the 3 are so important. 3 copies of Miracle Fusion. You have to weigh the positives and negatives of the third copy of this. For a while, I was only playing 2 copies of this, like previous times I played this deck, because I would always hate running 3 and drawing into this when you just have a lot of these or a lot of just spells and traps and lacking the monsters. But for this event, it's so important against Dino Rabbit. You really needed to play the 3. It can be iffy against Insectors because what happens is you need Neo Alias in the graveyard to make your Hero Blasts live. And a lot of the times you really want to have access to your Alias with Gemini Sparks, because that's how you beat the Insector matchup. You don't beat Insectors by summoning the Shining and beating them down, because then they just Dragonfly, Hornet, and destroy you. You beat them by having chainable spell and trap cards, where Miracle Fusion kind of contradicts using Hero Blast and always having an Alias to use Gemini Spark. Of course, unless you're able to get 3 Elemental Heroes in the graveyard, and then you're fine. So you understand that you're going to make that matchup a little bit more difficult by playing the 3 game 1, but you would be able to side it out for games 2 and 3, and it's just such a trump card in so many matchups. Shining is so big, so it's very important to play the 3. Next up, we're going to have 3 copies of Gemini Spark. I warranted 3 because I put, of course, the 4th Gemini and Crusader Endymion in the deck. This deck does not play Mystical Space Typhoon, and it's just basic streamline removal and versatile removal. You can chain it to things, you can respond to torrential tributes with this, you can target field spells with this. Of course, everybody knows the usages of Gemini Spark, but for the way that I wanted to construct this deck, I wanted just basic removal and big monsters, and this fits right into the plan of just basic removal. And it's chainable. It breaks up the wind-up loop. It breaks up when they're going off or trying to go off with Dragonfly and Centipede and Insectors. You can chain it to things in the mirror match when they summon the Shining. You can go like Mystical Space Typhoon back row, chain Gemini Spark, tributing my Alias, target your Shining. Shining gets destroyed, not lasting on the chain. You don't get your cards back. I end up drawing a card, MSTing a back row. Things like that will always happen. Very versatile card, very important. You need to play the 3. I do understand the inconsistency issues of this, but you will eventually hit the Stratos and the Alias and the E-Calls and so on. So 3 is fine, especially because you're also playing the additional Crusader of Endymion. 2 E-Call. The only time I ever got clogged with E-Calls and monsters was in the top 4 game 1. At one point, several turns into the game, my hand was Alias, 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 E-Call, Rhoda. Not exactly the time that you want that to happen, but that's okay. It was actually interesting because it also happened in the top 8. I had a hand of like Rhoda, E-Call, Alias, and then a few other cards. But what I was able to do is I was able to set an important spell or trap card, Solemn Warning, with a card that at this point was very useless, a Reinforcements of the Army. I said both of them, hoping, basically in my head, I really wanted him to Heavy Storm so I could just not have to worry about it for the rest of the game. Of course, he plays Heavy Storm, destroys a virtually useless Reinforcements of the Army, and then of course the Solemn Warning I would have liked to keep, but I'll get over it, but because now I'll be able to just go off and set a lot of back rows, and it ended up working out, so it can be positive in some instances, because you can bait them into destroying it. And then Book of Moon, again, a very versatile card. Dark Hole, Heavy Storm. Not a lot of people expect you to play Heavy Storm in a deck with Skill Drain. That's exactly the point. So many times they'd set 3, Heavy. They'd be like, oh, you play Heavy. Yes, I do. Heavy Storm. So that would just trump so many people. Monster Reborn, Reinforcement of the Army, and that finishes up these spells. For the trap lineup. Thought a lot about this the night before, how to build the trap lineup, because I thought this would be the deciding factor in the success of this deck. 2 copies of Reinforcements of the Army. Basic streamline removal, punishes poor players, punishes people who are over-aggressive, works really well with your Elemental Hero, the Shining. It's good stuff. 2 Tarantulas, huge this format. 2 Dimensional Prisons. Oh, you acknowledge that your Injector matchup is going to be worse because of this card, but you're running Skill Drain. Sometimes you can have Skill Drains in D Prisons and beat the Injector matchup with those cards. And also, the Dino Rabbit matchup, the Hero matchup, TGs, all these rogue decks get so punished by Dimensional Prison. You really need to play them if you're going to play this type of deck. acknowledging in the back of your mind that you're going to give up the Insector matchup. You don't need to set it against Insectors. You're only playing 2, and there is a Mirror Force in here, so there's going to be 3 inherently dead cards in your main deck. I know, but you have the Hero Blasts, you have the Gemini Sparks, you have the Skill Drains, the Torrentials, the Book of Moon. You have enough ways to stop them from going off and to beat them down accordingly. It's okay to play the 2. You're going to need to play them. 2 copies of Solemn Warning, obligatory and self-explanatory. Then we have 2 Dark Bribes. Dark Bribe, very important, very interesting card. Won me a lot of games. Won me a game where I Dark Bribed a Horn of the Phantom Beast in damage step when my opponent attacked and was only a 200, and my Crusader Endymion trumped his Werewolf. So many uses. It's actually good against Insectors. Counterintuitive to think this card is good against Insectors. You don't just set it against Insectors. No, that's not how you play Dark Bribe against Insectors. You set Dark Bribe when you have Skill Drain and Shadow Mirror. That's how you play Dark Bribe against Insectors. It's very important to acknowledge how to play all of the cards in this deck against all of the matchups. This deck adapts to lots of different situations. If you need to beat them down with the Shining and big monsters, go for it. If you need to leave your Miracle Fusions in hand because you need to have your Sparks and Hero Blasts live, that's a win condition. If you need to play Dark Bribe and leave them in your hand and not set cards until you can finally take over the Insector field and set up with Skill Drains, that's what you're going to have to do. Dark Bribe lets you protect the cards that are important, but also lets you keep the game state favorable for yourself. When they're drawing an extra card, when you have Shadow Mirror up, it virtually doesn't matter against that deck, and it never ended up mattering. And the fact that you can just whittle down your opponent's resources, simplify the game state, drop a few Miracle Fusions, some big monsters, perhaps a Barbaros, and protect yourself with a Dark Bribe, draw your card. I have a 3,000 beater, a 3,100 beater, and I'm attacking for game regardless. Next up, we have 2 copies of Hero Blast. Only 2 copies. This card is very important. It's very good. But I do not want to have cloggy hands of just Hero Blasts and Gemini Sparks with no targets. I felt 2 was just the perfect number. You'll see it enough. You'll have it enough. It's very important against so many matchups. Very important against Insectors and Dino Rabbits and this and that in the mirror match. Just 2. I acknowledge 3rd is definitely a possibility in the future. But for this event, I felt 2 was just enough. You don't want to be caught in those awkward situations. And it can be bad against some rogue decks. I mean, it's not the greatest against like TGs, which I played 2 of. It's awkward against 6 Samurai. You don't want to have dead cards like that against all these weird rogue decks that you expected to play. I played against Nordics. I guess it was good against Nordics for all I know. But, you know what I mean? When you're playing an anti-meta deck like this, you need to really be prepared to vary your play style and vary what you're going to try and accomplish. And having a lot of cards that are just so dedicated to certain decks really hurts your chances game 1. And that's why I only played 2. Double Skill Drain. I only played 2 Skill Drain, not a 3rd. Again, I didn't want to lose to consistency issues. That's a huge problem with this deck, and a huge problem I feel with decks like this. They draw double Skill Drain, they draw triple Skill Drain, they draw triple Skill Drain, Gemini Spark, Hero Blast, they lose. 2. These cards at 2 are very important. Just 2. Not 3, just 2. You don't want to have these clogged. You don't want to have lots of these, and you don't want to have lots of hand traps, and you don't want to have lots of Honest in your hand and having nothing to do with them. Very basic. Big monsters, and removal, and Skill Drain, and counter traps. Basic. Only 2. You do not want 3. 2 inconsistent to have that many in your deck. Mirror Force. Yes, your Insector matchup is going to be hurt by this, but same reasoning as Dimensional Prison, as I spoke about a few seconds ago. Road. Inconsistent card. I know, but it's just there to help you when you're going aggressive, and it lets you set all your back rows, which is important. This deck likes to go Strato set 4. It loves to do it. Thunder King set 3. Go. You win the game and you do that most of the time. Problem is, it doesn't stop like Mystical Space Typhoon against the Skill Drain. That's why I played the 2 roads instead of like two Dark Bribes instead of 2 roads or something like that. But it is good because you can really just beat them down and be like, Stratos turn 1, Alias turn 2. I'm gonna go aggressive. You want a Torrential? Sure, road, and you win. I summoned a few Stardust Dragons off road. I think twice I resolved this card, and it's bad against Insectors. So, like, you actually do side this out against Insectors. You don't side Bribe out, but you do side this out. Because at least this stops MST. This only stops Heavy. And then, or Judgment, because it's Solemn Judgment. For the side deck. Double Maxi. I'm not maining them. I'm not playing hand traps. My reasoning is, against windups, that's the only deck I want to have the hand traps against. The only deck. I do not want Maxi against Dino Rabbit. I don't want it against anything else, especially Insectors. I'm going to side them. The die roll should be 50-50. Am I really going to play enough windups over the course of this tournament to where I'm going to lose the die roll, have to go second, and have them open the loop? Sure, that happened to me. Game 1, round, I think 10, my opponent opened the windup loop and beat me. Won the roll.